Over the centuries, the British landscape has changed significantly. Rare habitats such as this wildlife-rich culm grassland in Devon have been severely reduced and are even at risk of being lost altogether. But a pair of experimental engineers have been employed here in the hope they can alter the landscape for the better. Beavers, nature's top engineers. They're tree-felling, dam-building champions. And I'm here in a secret location to meet a couple of beavers who, in just 1 year, have brought about big changes to the countryside. Peter Burgess, Conservation Manager for the Devon Wildlife Trust, explains why something had to be done to save the culm grassland.
It's really wildlife rich and it's one of the jewels in the crown of what we have in Devon. Unfortunately, it costs a lot of money to manage, and we're looking and investigating the potential of beavers restoring this habitat back to its former glory.
Left to its own devices, this area would eventually become oak woodland. But for the culm grassland to flourish, there needs to be a good supply of water, and tree saplings need to be dealt with. So, 2 beavers with their renowned gnawing ability have been released into this large fenced enclosure, and the results have been quite dramatic. My goodness me, look at this! That is that's astonishing.
It's a huge amount of effort to be expending. You know, they're felling really quite large chunks of wood here.
Amazing. And so this area of water behind us, is this all being created by the beavers?
This is all their activity, probably the last 4 months or so. And you can see, you know, just engineered a whole wetland environment.
And what's also astonishing is the height difference of the water here on the dam, and then it's probably it's nearly a metre drop down.
It's about a metre drop, but beavers aren't daft. You know, what they've utilised is this tree which has fallen over in the past, and they thought, yeah, I'll use that as the dam.
Don't tell me they've dug the whole of this channel.
All of the activity through here is through the beavers. So they excavate these beaver canals, as they're known, and these are their highways through the landscape.
Understanding their habits means Peter knows the best place to get a glimpse of our landscape gardeners. Usually nocturnal animals, we should have had plenty of time to set up all the nighttime camera kit. Bubbles everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh wow! We've literally just finished rigging the kit and they've caught us a bit on the hoof because it's not even 8 o'clock yet and they're already out and about, so that's all quite exciting, isn't it? I cannot believe we're this close. Oh, we get to see the size of them.
Here we go. So they're much larger than you think. When you see them in the water, they're very sleek, but you can see there the size of his tail. But
that is an incredible sight in the British countryside, isn't it?
Fabulous.
Really?
Absolutely. Off he goes.
But that wasn't the end of our luck for the evening. 2 beavers. It seems both beavers are getting well stuck into the job at hand. A native species to the UK, beavers were hunted to extinction in the 16th century. Now they're back. Through reintroduction projects like this one, we can get a better understanding of how they manage the environment around them.
That's what's so exciting about the project, to actually see the beavers going off and basically cutting down very small birch sapling like that.
Yeah.
And you know, they're managing the grasslands around here. That's one of the biggest threats for culm grasslands, is this young sapling growth coming up. And yeah, the beavers are doing the job for us.
That's brilliant. Stingy coppicing, out of hours, working overtime.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there right in front of us eating. Here in Devon, this trial seems to be going really well. It's great that the engineering works carried out by these beavers are helping to revitalise this fragile landscape. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see beavers finding a new, more permanent home in the British countryside.
500 years ago, beavers were native to this country, but they were hunted to extinction. The idea of reintroducing them is controversial amongst both farmers and anglers. There are already a couple of beaver colonies in Argyll and Tayside in Scotland, and now new research carried out in Devon suggests reintroducing them could bring benefits to both flood management and water quality. Beavers released in a controlled environment by a Devon farmer have been studied by the local Wildlife Trust and researchers from the University of Exeter. I've been talking to Professor Richard Brazier, who explained that the quality of water flowing from their dams has been improved.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we thought it would be, but we were quite shocked at the profound changes that we saw. In terms of sediment, of course, when we farm the land, we can accelerate soil erosion. We saw quite a lot of sediment coming into the site, on average about 150 milligrams per litre of water when it rained heavily. Leaving the site, though, the figures were reduced to 10 or 15 milligrams per litre, so a really significant effect on the sediment pollution.
And what about the impact these beavers might have had on flooding?
Again, the effects have been profound. What we see, they've built 13 dams, upslope of which there's a large pool of water now. When it rains, the pools fill up in a kind of staircase through the wet woodland. And so there's a lot of storage capacity there which soaks up the water, stores the water, and that water before the dams were built would have taken maybe 10, 20 seconds to move through the site. Now it's taking a number of hours to move through the site. So that flood peak, which is typically the real problem in these landscapes, is what we call attenuated. It's flattened down, it's squashed out, and the floods just take a lot longer to move through the site now the beavers have done their work.
And is it actually flooding the land? Because I guess a lot of farmers might say, well, if you reintroduce beavers, they build dams like this, but our land's going to get flooded.
Well, that's a very, very valid concern, and so we've set up the experiment to look at that. This site, I should add, is a wet woodland site. It was lightly grazed some years ago, but it's not what you might call highly productive farmland. So yes, it is. When the dams are built, it does push the water sideways, perhaps a few tens of metres. And that land has got wetter, the water tables have risen, and of course more water is now stored in the land. But in terms of the more intensively managed pastures to either side, there's no sign at all of the water being pushed into that farmland. And so it hasn't had a negative impact on the local farming productivity.
Would you be able to anticipate what would happen if they were introduced on a wider scale?
It's a very interesting question, and obviously one we're wrestling with at the moment because of the recent flooding. I think if beavers were introduced, they actually have been in the River Otter catchment, it could be the case that they could block ditches or streams, which then might result in some farmland being flooded. If that happened, what would have to happen to follow on would be some management of those beavers, modification of the dams, which you can do in quite a straightforward manner, to lower the water behind them and then make sure it doesn't necessarily flood high-value farmland. Or, of course, you could envisage a situation where if farmers were happy to store more water on their landscape, that they might well be able to be remunerated for doing so.
And I think there are discussions about that at DEFRA at the moment.
Of course.
And have you found that the beavers' way of life has had a positive effect on farming?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the landscapes we farm, there's all sorts of diversity. There are patches that we produce a lot of food in, of course, and are very productive. There are patches that aren't so productive. And so the beavers tend to inhabit those riparian zones, those river corridors, which aren't really being farmed heavily. And actually, they can engineer the landscape to store more water, store more soil, even stop these nutrients, these pollutants getting from farmland into our surface waters, so that there's positive benefits there for having these animals around.
Professor Richard Brazier from the University of
Pregnant beavers are being shot in Scotland. Scientists in Edinburgh Zoo have revealed that pregnant beavers are being shot and killed. Beavers have only just been reintroduced to Scotland, yet landowners can kill them legally. Pregnant beavers and new mums are being shot indiscriminately. Scientists are concerned that shooting can leave them to suffer for hours, and that beaver cubs are being left to starve in the wild. In the 16th century, beavers were hunted to extinction in the UK. In the 21st century, shouldn't we be looking after them? Sign the petition to make shooting beavers illegal.